So good evening. Thank you so much for coming to our VCU Funding Your Graduate Education presentation. Tonight, we are going to be going through a lot of different information. First off, let's present who is here as your presenters. My name is Jenna Lenhart. I'm the recruitment specialist in the School of Education.
And my name is Nick Williams. I wear a lot of different hats, but mainly I am the Assistant Director of Student Engagement in VCU School of Business, but I'm also a doctoral student in the School of Education's EDD and Education Leadership Program.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Jocelyn Bedell. I'm the Special Assistant to the for Student Affairs here. Been in the Division of Student Affairs for about 9 years at VCU and in the field for 20. And so when it comes to understanding graduate student employment for VCU, there's a couple of just insight and points I'd like to share. We as a division are very committed to supporting the education and the sort of experiential learning component of your work if you are interested particularly in the higher education administration student affairs world. We have 13 different departments in the Division of Student Affairs. We have lots of partner offices in the Division of Enrollment Management and Student Success within the different academic colleges and schools. Like Nick mentioned, he works specifically in the School of Business, but he is a student affairs professional in the work that he does there. So we have a number of graduate student employment opportunities, GSW, graduate student workers, across our many, many departments. They change every year. There's never a given amount in any given year. So it's sort of, what is available in the year that you're applying. Some students will do 1 year in an office. Sometimes they'll hold on for 2 or more. Sometimes they'll try an office and change the next year. So there's quite a variety. There is no sort of rule of thumb or path specific to working as a graduate student at VCU, and particularly in the student affairs. But this year, you'll see a number of opportunities available across VCU offices like that, from residential life to adult student services, student activities, leadership involvement. Oh gosh, so many different opportunities. And Jenna will remind you how to find all of those later in the presentation. Many graduate assistant or graduate employment jobs also happen beyond our scope for Jenna and Nick and I. So another point I would just mention is to keep checking the VCU jobs website. A lot of departments often don't know they need or can hire grad students until kind of closer into the summer, near the new semester. So things will pop up throughout the summer. So keep an eye on different job postings, continue to build your network here. Stay in touch with Jenna and myself and Nick to learn more about what's upcoming. But it is one of our commitments as a Division of Student Affairs to invest in and support the learning of our grad students, whether it's through employment, internships, practicum, projects. The program Nick is in, the doctoral program, we are often one of the project sponsors or hosts for that experience. So we are very involved in the School of Education. And just a reminder of, while COVID has become quite a part of our life, COVID is still impacting budgets on campus. The state of Virginia is still coming up with its own budget. So there is some tightness, I would say, around hiring, some caution still around hiring. You'll find that with us and many other schools. And just, hiring can look and feel different in every department at VCU. So we try to help organize it, but just know it does take a little bit of time around budget time, which is right now.
So with that being said, hey guys, it's Nick again. For anybody that just hopped in, again, I'm the Assistant Director of Student Engagement in the School of Business. So I promise you, I'm gonna need y'all to show some faces and smiles. Or if you want to show the frown, it's okay. Garfield is like my spirit animal and he frowns all the time except for with lasagna. So I do want to bring to y'all's attention some things that can maybe help you in that search process. And I guess to preface it, a lot of these tips I learned in my own master's program experience, looking at GA assistantships and everything of that nature, because you really want to find the best position possible that's going to fit your short and long-term goals. but also is going to, meet some of those, important needs for you, whether it's financial, whether it's emotional, whether it's spiritual, whatever it may be. I would say the biggest thing is to think about what are the most important pieces for you and what's going to be the best space for you to feel successful and fulfilled. So the first thing you have to really think about when you're looking at GA assistantships or opportunities is thinking about, is it in a larger unit or a smaller unit? Because both have very, very different atmospheres. So previously I used to work in financial aid, and I used to work in financial aid for the greater university. Now then in my GA internship at UVA, I actually worked within the School of Business there. And ironically, I work in the School of Business now. And their atmospheres, their priorities, their funding is very, very different. The kind of projects I worked on were very, very different. So you really want to think about what kind of atmosphere works best for you. If you're one that you need a big pond to swim around and have some room in, but understanding that you may not necessarily have as much leadership, give or take, as frequently, or you may confront more bureaucracy. If you're not cool with that kind of atmosphere, and that's not the one that's most conducive to your growth, then be upfront about that with yourself. If you like a smaller unit to where you're likely to have a whole lot more on your plate, be put into leadership positions, maybe sit at the table more often, and you like that responsibility, you like that opportunity, then maybe a smaller unit might be a better space for you. So really thinking about the kind of space and environment that's going to lead to your growth is vital to you finding not only an assistantship, but an assistantship that will help you really get to where you're trying to go. The second thing is that there's really a difference between funding and fit. I know, being a grad student firsthand, that we're always thinking about, I got personal bills to pay. I have student loans that I'm trying to avoid taking out, because I'm going to be honest, when it comes to funding, outside of any scholarships or assistantships or grants that you can get from the department that you're a part of, it's mainly going to be student loans from financial aid, and in particular, unsubsidized loan eligibility. And then you could also pursue a grad plus loan. So very much so, as a grad student, the first thing on your mind is, can I even afford to be in this program? Can I even afford to be in it for this amount of time? You're going to be thinking about that. But while funding is so important, you still want to make sure that you're thinking about the best fit, because you can find an assistantship that pays a lot, but it could be the worst for your growth. Like you could really be unhappy. You really want to think about your happiness too, because that's what's going to lead to the long-term results, but also those opportunities for networking. Like, I know for me, I love words of affirmation. I love feeling valued. I love having the space where I can have room to be entrepreneurial and grow. If I don't have that, I can't really maximize the space as much as I want to. And that's just me. So you want to find sort of the perfect fit to where you'll have both the funding and the space to where it's going to line up with your values, line up with your goals. And also, that the same thing comes to when you're doing these interviews, when it comes to supervisors, because that really does make or break your experience in an assistantship, but also in your full-time career as you continue to pursue. And I've learned, again, there are so many things I learned along the way because of that. Really just look at these opportunities as professional development opportunities, because as much as your service and your work will benefit in office, this is also an opportunity for you to find that same benefit. When I was a GA at UVA, I was doing the whole round robin interview with the different offices and everything like that, where we had to put our top three. I had gotten matched with the School of Business there, but because I had built such a good connection with another office and they saw some of the skill sets I had, that opened other doors for multiple opportunities beyond just my main assistantship. And so again, it allowed me to have, I can be able to tell more stories a little bit further later on in the presentation about that. But again, this is a really strong professional development opportunity for you to feel fulfilled and really meet your goals, and also get experiences that you normally would not get. You really get a chance to shape that pathway. And then think about the time commitment. Think about the expectations. I would say when you go into a lot of the interviews, ask those kind of questions of what those expectations are to look like, and really be realistic with yourself and what's already on your plate. Can I actually meet those expectations and give my all? Because you don't want to waste an opportunity with unrealistic expectations. Thinking about, are you going to be able to work from home in this role, or is it going to be in person? Like, I know for my office, our GA position, our GA is going to be really busy. We're very much so an event heavy kind of office. And so we need somebody who is looking to be hands into a lot of event planning, which means that you're going to be busy trying to balance your schoolwork and everything like that. I'm doing that right now as a doctoral student and working full time. So again, you have to really think about the time, the expectations for event planning or whatever needs that office may have. Are they in person or are they online? Those are all factors that I would really recommend thinking about to really help you find the best fit and also the most benefit for you in the short term and long term. Because again, just because you're a graduate student doesn't mean that you shouldn't also have mutual benefit. It's a symbiotic relationship between you and the office that you will have an opportunity with. And that's what also leads to letters of recommendation for other opportunities, job opportunities, and things of that nature. So.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, and I think in some of those ways too, I know that some individuals on this call might be going back and forth between the funding conversation of, can I do this full-time? Can I do this part-time? I know some of our programs, like the EDD, for instance, is a only part-time program. So there is sort of an expectation, or usually most of our students, if not all of our students, are full-time professionals doing the program and completing the program part-time. So it's not that the GSW opportunities are not available for EDD students, but it's probably not going to give you the financial and career support that usually is expected for that balance to happen because it's a part-time program. So I just wanted to also note that because that came up as a question. So I appreciate that, Nick. So we reached out to our student financial aid or student, what do they call it now? The new Student Financial Services Center,
SFMC.
Which is now a one-stop shop for in VCU, and that has really changed for a lot of reasons. And one of them is really to be this one hub for our students, both our prospective students and then our current students. One component, and I know I brought this up in a recent email as well in a newsletter, but if you are going to start in the fall, you want to file a FAFSA for basically next academic year, so 2022, 2023. If you start in the summer and you would like to apply for aid for summer, you want to apply for both the 21-22, so the year that's finishing up, and then the year that you're going into as well for your fall. So just keep that in mind. If you have any questions about that, feel free to let us know. And this is some of the suggestions that they had also, our team had there as well. So that all eligible students complete the FAFSA even if you don't want loans, and mainly because there may be opportunities that are maybe financial need component to that, and you don't want to be left out of those opportunities. So if eligible to apply, and if to be eligible for federal financial aid, you be enrolled at least half-time, and that's 5 credits per semester at the graduate level, because full-time is considered 9 credits versus 12 credits at the undergrad. So keep that in mind, that those changes happen at the graduate level as well. Some of the student academic progress, this is usually not an issue, but just keep that in mind as well as it relates to your satisfactory academic progress at the graduate level. So some components, and what I always say is that each student's experience with funding your graduate education is going to be potentially very unique to each of you on this call, depending on your housing situation, depending on if you're moving to Richmond, depending on all sorts of different aspects of your specific situation, will determine what your specific funding puzzle looks like. And so in the School of Education, we have scholarships. The scholarships, and you'll see on the right-hand side of the slide, there's a link, and don't worry, these slides will be shared, so you can link out to these. But we have university-wide scholarships and Scholarship Hub. The reality is, though, you need to be an active student enrolled in your program in order to apply for these scholarships, and most of the scholarships happen in the spring. So for students who have multi-year programs, or if you're a part-time student who will be in your program for 2 years to complete your full program, 2 years or more, then this is wonderful for your second year. So anybody coming right now in the summer of 2022, you would then start to apply, and it's usually early spring in the Scholarship Hub for most of our School of Education scholarships. So there is also a demystifying graduate funding video. I won't go into it in this video, mainly because there is this other demystifying graduate funding, because the language that we use at VCU can be confusing. There are graduate assistantships, and then there are graduate student worker positions. Those are very different, and even within the graduate student worker positions, there can be differences in how different departments are able to fund positions. So definitely take a look at that funding video. It will break that down a lot better than what I just did. And it gives a nice chart to kind of talk through fellowships and other components as well. If there's anyone on this call that will have military support or military benefit support, we have a wonderful military student services office that can actually look up your funding, see where you are, what eligibility there are, how long you have, and talk through the process of maximizing your benefits. So if you have military student funding or military funding, then that is absolutely an office to start with, so that you can have all of your, again, your pieces of your puzzle put together. Employer support. VCU, if you are a VCU employee, we have tuition benefits. If you are a VCU medical campus employee, those are seen as separate right now. And there are some different sort of limitations and components to if you're a grant funded position versus a non-grant funded position. So do keep in mind that some of those components may be different even at VCU. So keep an eye on that, and also ask your HR professional. They are experts on this and they can help navigate that process. If you are an employee at any other organization outside of VCU, there may be support for funding, and so all of the different, for instance, K through 12 districts in Virginia has various different levels of support and different processes to apply for that support. I've worked with a lot of different organizations that maybe they don't pay up front, but they pay back, and then kind of working with billing on how to get payment will depend on what organization you're working with. For instance, when I was doing my doctoral degree, because my organization was a partner with the institution, then I basically got like a slight discount on my, now it was a private institution, so that wasn't much of a discount, but just keeping an eye on some of those and asking the questions to your HR and your benefits team to see what support can you receive. The Minority Educator Recruitment, Retention, and Equity Center, or MERIC, also has funding support, particularly if you are passionate about minority education and teachers of color, either researching or supporting or being a teacher of color. And so there are very specialized scholarships and funding support within MERIC. There are teaching specific financial aid opportunities. So I know not everybody on this call is in one of our teaching programs, but many people are in our teaching or licensure specific programs. Depending on the school, depending on the subject, and depending on where you want to teach, will potentially create eligibility. For instance, STEM educators, science, technology, engineering, and math educators, there is a NOICE scholarship that will help support if you are interested in working in high needs schools anywhere in the nation. So Title I schools nationally. And then there's of course RTR, which is a residency program that also has a full tuition support option as well, and accepted into that grant residency program as well. So there are a lot of teaching specific financial aid opportunities that we can also go into. There are on-campus work opportunities. So many of you on this call have also applied for our GSW week that is happening next week. Our interviews are going to be sent out tomorrow of what you have been selected for. So tomorrow morning, keep an eye on your email for these the positions to sign up for interviews for next week with our employers. And graduate school funding, they have a website that also goes through a lot of different things when thinking about graduate school funding, both as a new student, but a lot of times as a continuing student. I know I sent one scholarship out that's a brand new scholarship through the graduate school as well. And if you have any questions about that, then it's Jeff Wilson or Dr. Wilson, who is our contact on the School of Education side of things, or really the non-medical side of things of the university.
And so as Jenna mentioned earlier, the Student Financial Management Center is a really important resource for both you as prospective and entering students, and then while you are a student at VCU. They don't just talk about financial aid, they talk about more all-encompassing ways to fund and budget and plan for your educational future, thinking about all of the things that you have on your plate. So the advisors there take a really great holistic approach with you. And so as long as you've accepted admission, right, Jenna, then you can start to access your financial aid assigned advisor, counselor person through, they have a contact us page that's linked there. You also can log into our Navigate system, which is a really great resource for where you will find all kinds of things about your education, including your advisor, your academic partner in crime, also your financial advisor, counselor in the SFMC. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but luckily that is one person who can help you with all of your questions around financing your education once you learn all you can from Jenna as well. So just another plug for this amazing resource that we know so many students are either unsure of when they can use it or should I use it. 100% use it. They're there for both grad students and undergrads. So I can't speak highly enough. And I don't know, Nick, if you want to add anything in there that I might have missed since this was your home.
So for many of you, I actually used to work in SFMC about 6 months ago. And I would say that the beauty of how they have things set up is that each counselor is assigned to a specific school. So if you're in School of Ed, you have that very specific financial counselor that's meeting with all of School of Ed students, undergrad and grad. So you have that very unique experience. And the unique piece of it is that every counselor also has a partnership with all the academic advisors in that particular school. So they are constantly thinking about how you can feel fully supported holistically, academically and financially, because what the university has identified is that those are two key areas that tend to lead to low, either high or low student engagement. And we want to make sure that our students, when they get here, they feel supported in their full journey, whether they're an undergraduate or a graduate student. And so I highly, highly, highly recommend. I was the advisor for social work in Wilder School. I will always tell my students, take advantage of that access, because I promise you, most institutions have not built that kind of unique connection. Even at UVA, I used to work in financial at UVA. I was like, oh, we need to have a better connection with the academic advisors because we're hearing the same thing, but we're not talking. Trust me, here we talk. They really do talk. And I highly recommend that you take advantage of that partnership and really just let them know the fullness of your situation. Because as graduate students, especially, everybody's situation is very unique and very different, especially when it comes to funding. Some people may have military benefits that brings to the plate. You may come in and say, I really don't want loans, but guess what? In that first semester, that first year, you're going to probably have to lean on loans, but they can give you some advice on how to navigate that debt system. Because I tell my students, don't take more than you need, because it's really tempting and it's really easy to, as a graduate student, you have a higher threshold. But also, if you ever have anything going on academically, let's say you aren't doing so hot in one of your classes, and let's say you fail a class and you have to retake it because there's graduate protocols you do have to follow. There's satisfactory academic progress, which I promise you, it throws off graduate students every single time. So be as transparent. Really think of them as like your best friend, to make sure that you are able to not just get the funding that you need, but also keep the funding that you need. Because a lot of scholarships, that are merit-based per se, that do require you to complete a FAFSA, it's not necessarily saying that it's looked at in the same way as student loans are, but it's just for the consideration of looking at your demonstrated need, because some scholarships do have that need-based foundation. And so if you ever have any issues with completing the FAFSA or have any questions, again, tap into the SFMC. You can go in person. They can schedule virtual appointments. They literally are they're your best friend. So take advantage of that. That's one thing I wish I would have done as a graduate student. And with that being said, this is where, as you're thinking about, your opportunities, you're thinking about your funding, you want to get a little creative because not everything is going to work out the way that you want it to. Trust me, if the world were perfect, grad school will be, nothing but scholarships all around for everybody. We will all get the jobs that we want, the timing that we want, everything just be perfect. But unfortunately, things just don't lay out that way. And sometimes we have to sort of sculpt our own path. I know before I mentioned my own journey as a graduate student of how I had interviewed for one office, but because I had mentioned I had res life experience in other offices, hey, we have an opportunity. We would love for you to help us build out this model. And at first, this is when I talk about when I mean by thinking creative, of looking at every opportunity as an opportunity. Because if I had turned down that extra internship, now they weren't going to pay me anything. It was going to literally be me building out a program. I actually had to negotiate. Hey, I need a budget. Hey, can I get a little something? I'm a grad student. I need a little help. That became one of the best opportunities for me to also find a mentor who actually served as the door opener for my first job out of grad school. Because the grad school market, or the job market outside of grad school was not great. I graduated in 2015 with my MED in higher education and student affairs at UVA, and it just wasn't a great market at the time for going into student activities. Everything was res life at the time, and I didn't want to do res life again. And because I did that extra GA internship, did well, it was aligned with everything I was trying to accomplish, along with my other one in the School of Business. Again, that led to a job opportunity because my boss of that second GA internship was the wife of my soon-to-be boss for that role. And she had told him about me, and boom, bada bing, networking 101. So really, you have to think really creative. If you identify an office that like perfectly lines up with what you're trying to accomplish, and you just don't see anything there, pitch something to them. Think very entrepreneurially of, hey, I see you guys have this need. There's a gap here. These are some things I'm really interested in. These are stuff I've done some research on. Could I help you build out a program, or can I help you with that issue? I'm a graduate student right now, and a lot of my research, I'm interested in that, and I'd be happy to use my research to help you guys grow. And oftentimes too, if you go find some funding, let's say through a grant or things like that, and you bring that to the table, I promise you that will also help your case as well. Because as has been mentioned before, the challenge with assistantships, the challenge with, as we say, federal work study, graduate federal work study positions, is that the funding source for funding those positions, it's a little unique depending on what kind of role it is. And so offices would love to have more graduate students helping out with the work that they do, but we need the money to support that. Because like even now with my office, we're thinking creatively of how we can do that too. So I would say be really entrepreneurial. If there is an office that lines up with what you're trying to accomplish, but they don't have an opportunity there for graduate students, start creating one and pitch it. Think of it like you're going to a startup and you want to present a new venture that could be really lucrative for them, but also lucrative for you as well. And think about all the things that they may think about. Ask the questions that they may not be thinking about. Also, just go in and check in with different offices. I actually had a student who's now one of our interns. For a year, he actually would keep stopping by some of our events in our office, is asking, hey, do you guys have any internships available, or what do you guys do? Oh, I noticed this, and I think you can maybe do this in a different way. I could really help with that. And when we started actually hiring for positions a year later, he was the first person that we thought of like, hey, we really want you to apply. And lo and behold, he's made a huge impact. And so again, you have to really be entrepreneurial to create the opportunity that most fits you, especially if you don't find one that is lining up exactly for the fit in the funding. Sometimes you have to sort of make that boat yourself and drive it to the table. I've heard a saying, if they won't let you at the table, you build your own table or you build your own chair and place it there. And oftentimes that initiative is often rewarded, because as a professional, you're going to be in positions where you have to really think on the spot of, you don't have everything you need to make it perfect, but you have just what you need to make it right. So think about and really just look at the different offices, find opportunities, and really create opportunities for yourself, network, explore, get involved in different spaces, especially if there's an office that you want to work for. Go to a lot of their events, participate, be the person they can't forget about, that you're the highest, the most engaged individual. I promise you, they won't forget that, because that means that you genuinely are passionate about the work that they do. Again, these are all the different kind of thinking out of the box tips that could really help you as a graduate student maximize the experience. And that's something I wanted to do when I was a master's student in an accelerated one-year program at a university that's my alma mater, is I didn't want the atypical experience. I wanted to maximize the opportunity because I already had the undergraduate experience, but I wanted to enhance my graduate opportunity. And again, funding will change from year to year. Be persistent. Always ask, if opportunities have opened up, because it may not be open one year, but it may open up the next. So you never know until you ask. And really think about those student discounts when it comes to working. Sometimes you can have an employer that can pay for your education. Like VCU is a great employer that really believes in personal and professional development. They will pay for your 6 credit hours to a certain extent, depending on the cost of your program. I'm fortunate that it pays for mine, thank God, in full. So thinking about those opportunities, even if you don't want to work at VCU or in higher education, just ask that to any employer that you're working on. Because I know some people have to work while they're in school. Some people may have kids and it's like, I can't not work while in school, but I need to pursue this opportunity. Again, you really get to help shape those spaces. And I would say the more initiative you show, the more it's going to benefit you in the long run. So, but at the same time, you want to have balance. You want to think about self-care. The one thing I did that I wish I would have done in my master's that I'm doing now is that before I even started my program, I actually created a self-care plan that ensured that I took care of me. Because I could have all the money in the world, all the funding in the world, but if I'm exhausted and I can't take care of me, then what's the point? I'm just wasting more money than anything. So I highly recommend you really sit down and think about everything on your plate and think about what kind of conversations do you need to have with friends and family about your boundaries so that you can feel successful holistically when you're in the roles of an assistantship, when you are in the graduate program that you're a part of. It's going to be necessary for you to have that self-care plan so you can make sure that you're not letting go of the things that are really vital to you feeling happy and being happy, because you're going to be stressed. There are going to be stressful times. You can't avoid that piece, but you can manage in a healthy and effective way. And so that self-care plan for me has made the world of a difference in my EDD program right now. Whereas most people are like, oh, you're gonna be miserable, you're gonna be stressed. I'm over here calm, cool, collected in the EDD. Whereas in my master's program, I was freaking out, like a head, like a chicken running everywhere, because I just never figured out how to focus on me. And so when I got out of my master's, I literally had to look back and say, what did I learn? What did I gain in my master's program? And I really could not recollect because I really did not take care of myself. So think about a self-care plan of how you can create balance for yourself to still feel whole. So when you're in these spaces, you can authentically present the best version of yourself and not a fragment.
Thank you, Nick. And so one of the final pieces with this, and I know Jocelyn talked about the realities of higher education a little bit earlier as well, is to remember that offices hire throughout the year. So just like Jocelyn mentioned, some offices may still not know if they have their full funding for next year because budgets are happening right now and approvals of budgets are happening right now and through summer. There are also grants that are received throughout the year. So for instance, I submitted a grant that I'm hoping to hear back from in a positive way, hopefully in September. But I won't be able to then hire anybody until at least January, if not end of May, depending on when our funding is distributed. So that is very common with grants. And so to Nick's point, you may in your first semester have to take out loans to subsidize whatever else might be happening. And then other opportunities and other doors may open throughout the time that you're in your program. One of the best ways to keep up on this is definitely, obviously, monitor your VCU email. But the other piece that Nick just touched on that I think is incredibly important is talk to people who are doing the work that you're doing and that you're excited about. See if they are on Twitter or other social media, because when they get a grant, they'll start to talk about that. They'll start to share that out on their social media. And so one of those components of networking is really connecting and finding that space. And to Nick's point, figuring out how your days are going to be and how you set aside time for networking and engagement and things that you're really passionate about, because it will end up being something that will potentially connect and open doors and funding opportunities in the future. So a few final things, because I do want to leave at least 10 to 15 minutes for questions. There are some resources as you continue forward. The Chronicle of Higher Education, you'll have full library access when you accept admission. So once you are admitted and then you are enrolled in classes, you should have access to the full Chronicle of Higher Education. There are a lot of really wonderful opportunities, both from a learning outcome, from a networking outcome, and then also just keeping up with information that's happening in higher education. And then roles. There are roles that are posted within the Chronicle of Higher Education as well. And so keeping an eye on that. LinkedIn Learning. Now, I am a huge fan of LinkedIn Learning. One of the pieces is really what Nick was talking about, is that that networking component. Knowing who knows other people. It's much easier to reach out to somebody if you're like, hey, we have a similar connection here. How did you work with this person? And I'd love to chat with you about your career progression. It's a warmer handoff. It's a warmer way to get to know people and for other people to get to know you as well. It also helps you frame what you're interested in doing. And so as somebody who is sort of, I would say, in multiple boxes in higher education, I'm a researcher, I teach, and I'm an administrator. Those pieces, and I know Nick and Jocelyn also have multiple pieces of passion in their lives. You're able to be seen as your more whole self in a more professional way on LinkedIn Learning. So I really like it for that as well. The Student Financial Services website we mentioned earlier, the School of Education website, we continue to update and add new information to our School of Education website. Particularly the funding page, we try to update as often as we have new scholarships, new resources, and new ways for new students to get funding ideas and support. And again, social media for departments and units of interest. So I remember many years ago, a student came into School of Education and started watching the OMSA, or the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs, and they are very active on social media, and they posted a position that really they didn't post much outside of student affairs and maybe their newsletter or social media in their newsletter. And so that was one of the best ways to learn about that position early enough to apply and really sort of start to have those conversations in an intentional way to really put yourself in front of the hiring committee to make the most of that opportunity. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the presentation and the recording.